ActionSA has sounded the alarm over what it's calling inadequate health and safety protocols. The party highlighted a recent outbreak of food poisoning in Komati. It's also calling for the urgent release of the autopsy reports from the Enyobeni Tavern incident. We're joined by ActionSA's Eastern Cape Chairperson, Athol Trollip. Mr. Trollip, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. So it's been quite concerning to actually see the number of food poisonings that are happening, I think, across the country, the number of deaths they have led to. As ActionSA, you're raising concern about it. Have you done any work to try and understand what's really driving what we're seeing?
Thank you very much. You know what makes this matter all the more concerning for us as ActionSA is the fact that the latest food poisoning incidents that are happening across the country and right across the Eastern Cape, Queenstown last week, Buffalo City today, where 8 children were hospitalized, at Debenek yesterday, at schools where children go and buy sweets and chips and things and biscuits from the local spaza shops. What concerns us is that, you know, children are unwitting, they're very trusting, they have some pocket money and they go to the local accessible shop and they buy food to eat. Now, if there are no proper public health provisions and examinations and, you know, to make sure that the food that is being sold to children and to the general public, then you can end up with food poisoning, which we're seeing happening regularly. They're not sporadic outbursts, they're just happening everywhere now. And we're very concerned that, you know, if you go to recognized food chains, you will buy food that is not contaminated, hopefully, and certainly not expired. And we believe that many of these spaza shops, informal trading shops, are purchasing expired food somewhere and selling it to unwitting children. Now, it's simply unacceptable that this government can take the loss of lives of children as flippantly as they do. You know, the Enyobeni Tavern where 21 children died after consuming either poisoned alcohol or some kind of poisoning that took their lives. It's been 2 years now, and the parents have not received the autopsy outcomes. They don't know what killed their children, and it's simply untenable that we can have a situation like that. Imagine being one of those parents. Now, also imagine parents that send their kids off to school with some pocket money to buy some lunch or, you know, food at break time, and they buy them, you know, through school fences from aunties that sell food there or from spaza shops, and they end up in hospital. It's just not acceptable, and we believe there's not enough control of what's being sold in these informal trading shops called spaza shops or my friend shops, and we believe the same public health requirements should prevail there as they do in recognized food chains.
Systematically, what do you think has gone wrong? And again, when we talk about the informal sector, quite a difficult sector to try and police. And I think really the culture in the country has that for a long time there's been a level of trust that even though there aren't necessarily health inspectors that go around, as you're saying, checking the quality of goods that are sold either by the vendors in the street, outside schools, or even in some of the spaza shops, there has been that trust around the goods that are bought, but that has now been eroded. So what needs to then come into play?
Well, I think, first of all, you know, there's a lot of opportunism in this market. People avoid paying taxes, avoid paying VAT, and, you know, they can get away with selling expired goods to unwitting people. But also there's a massive counterfeit market going on in South Africa, from counterfeit cigarettes, counterfeit food, counterfeit biscuits and chips and things, and people are doing it in uncontrolled environments where public health is jeopardized. And it's a responsibility of the government and public service to make sure that these kind of outlets are not selling goods that are not up to public health standards. So counterfeiting is a big problem, and counterfeiting proliferates where the officialdom and police turn a blind eye. Now, what we've seen in the Eastern Cape is the arrival of police and officialdom. Whenever there's an incident, they run around, scurrying around, closing spaza shops and pretending to be looking at expiry dates on products. And then they disappear and nothing changes and the shops open and children start buying food there again and getting sick again. You can't have the same thing happening day in and day out with no changes being brought about. So I think the government's been delinquent, and that kind of delinquency needs to come to an end. And if this government is overwhelmed with governing and making sure that people are safe when they procure goods and services and food especially, then they need to be replaced.
On a very practical level then, Mr. Trollip, to take into account some of the suggestions that you're making, so if one were to implement them from tomorrow, what do you think would need to start happening to curb part of what we're seeing now?
Well, I would venture that any of the recognized food chains that sell food have regular visits from public health officials. I know that for a fact because some of my friends operate in that environment, and they tell me about inspections and visitations. And I can guarantee you right now that the people operating in the informal space do not have the same kind of quality assessment and public health visitation. So I believe that any kind of food stuff that's being sold anywhere in the country needs to be checked for health and hygiene. And if it's not being done, then the current government must pull up their socks and make sure that those kind of inspections are being done to safeguard the health of the people of this country.
If we're speaking realistically, Mr. Trollip, we barely have enough inspectors to go around just to make sure that businesses are abiding by the labor legislation as set out in the country's law. So realistically, while it's good to call for this and to want to see it, given the manpower that the Labor Department have and the Health Department with its health inspectors, it's practically impossible.
No, it's not impossible. That's their job. You know, if this government could police people having masks or lying on the beach during COVID, then they can police and examine and inspect the foodstuffs that are being sold to the general public. That is the role of government. It's not impossible. It can be done, and it must be done. The government cannot abdicate itself from the responsibility of ensuring that food that's being sold to the general public is not according to the health requirements. So it is absolutely their responsibility, and there is enough manpower. There just isn't the political will to do the oversight and to ensure that the food is being sold is healthy. For example, sale of illicit cigarettes and counterfeit cigarettes. They come across our border every single day. The state misses out on billions of rands of taxes, but they turn a blind eye to it. A packet of cigarettes in a spaza shop costs way less than a packet of cigarettes in a recognized branded chain, and I'm not going to mention names, but that is the point here. The point is that the government has a responsibility to fulfill its role in ensuring public health and safety standards. If they can't do that, as I said before, it's time to get a government that can do it. And if they're overwhelmed, then they must be replaced with a government that will do it.
Let's talk about the source of these goods. Any work that ActionSA has done to try and understand where these goods are actually being sourced from? Because I think, you know, if we also are able to deal with that aspect of the problem, then we can prevent it from being distributed across the country.
Well, at the moment, you know, there's some speculation that expired goods are being sold by the formal sector to the informal sector. That requires more investigation, and that would be a very serious infringement if that is happening, and we will continue to investigate that. But we're not an investigating authority as ActionSA. The government has got investigating authorities, and it's got directorates that should be doing that. But the issue around counterfeit products that are labeled as one thing, but they're not what they're labeled, that's a real problem because it's happening everywhere, and especially in the informal spaza shop, my friend's shop kind of environment. And that's very easy to pick up. You just go into a shop and you check the product, and you will see that it's counterfeit. It's not exactly the same as the name brand that they purport to be. And, you know, a policeman can do it. A public health inspector can do it. The local councillors should be making sure that the foodstuffs that are being sold there are not expired and that they're not counterfeit. Everybody in government, across all government departments, should be taking responsibility for this, because it could be one of their children tomorrow that succumbs to food poisoning because of carelessness by the current government.
Yeah, it really is an incredible problem. that we're seeing a rise of in the country. ActionSA's Eastern Cape Chairperson, Athol Trollip.